I know it sounds bad. I mean, who wants to be employed at a freaking Long John Silver's of all places? Not this guy, that's for sure. But, after a lengthy prison stint that led to moving back home with my parents at the age of 30, I was desperate for anything that would come my way. That's something they don't teach you before you commit a serious crime. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to hire an ex-con. I wasn't exactly doing myself any favors with the sleeves of tattoos snaking up and down my arms and the mean mug constantly stamped across my face, but hey, everyone needs money. I was more than willing to do the work. The problem was, no one would hire me. No company, no matter how large or how small, wanted anything to do with me. I was the proverbial scum on the boot of society. Little did I know, my luck was about to change. I barely even noticed it when I shuffled past. The Long John Silver's, that is. It had always been there, just a poorly lit husk of a building that no mortal creature dared enter. Honestly, I didn't know if it was open half the time. The place was a ghost town. Something seemed different about it that day, though. I scanned the decrepit building, searching for anything out of the ordinary. My eyes lit up when I realized what it was. A yellow, peeling "We're hiring" sign was barely clinging to one of the dingy windows. Immediately, alarm bells were blaring in my head. Yeah, I needed a job, but did I really need one that badly? I pulled out my wallet and watched a small cloud of dust billow into the frigid air as I opened it. Yes. The answer was yes. I did need a job that badly. I scoffed as I made my way to the door. Mason, what are you getting yourself into? The sorry excuse for an eating establishment looked just as shitty on the inside as it did on the outside. I wasn't sure whether to be appalled or impressed. I feel like you really have to try to get a restaurant to look that gloomy. If melancholy was what the owners were going for, they hit the nail on the head. I tentatively called out as I crossed the desolate lobby and approached the counter. Nobody was manning the register. A brief thought crossed my mind. The place looked too run down for cameras. I could probably take off with the till with relative ease. No. Chances were, they didn't have any money in there anyway. It wasn't worth the risk. Hello? Mr. Silver? Anyone here? I'm looking for a job. I shouted, my voice carrying through the empty building. I was met with silence. I decided to wait around for another minute or so, and if no one came to greet me, I'd call it quits. I glanced awkwardly at the fading menu. I couldn't find a single item that looked even remotely appetizing. I was suddenly snatched from my reverie by a noise. Were those rubber boots? I waited in anxious trepidation as the sound grew closer and closer. Was this the end of the line? Was I about to be abducted by the ghost of Long John Silver? I was just about to hightail it out of there, when a loud, hearty voice boomed from behind me. Arg! Who dares enter this here eatery? Dine at your own risk. I spun back toward the counter. I was definitely not prepared for the sight that greeted me. The man was exactly how I'd pictured him. He was a burly guy, probably around 6'3" with the boots on, if I had to guess. Long, thick auburn hair protruded from beneath a bright yellow plastic rain hat. An unkempt, scraggly beard rested atop a matching yellow raincoat, and he sported an eye patch over his left eye. I couldn't imagine a more cliché fisherman if I tried. Are you Long John? What does it look like? Of course I am. I'm Long John Silver, the man bellowed, wearing a smug grin on his face. I stared at him blankly. This had to be a joke. Wait, you're serious? No, I'm not serious. I just work here. My name is Greg, he said, dropping the phony accent. Oh. Do they always make you wear that? What, this old thing? He asked, gesturing to his outfit. I nodded. Nah, I just put it on for funsies. Wait. What the hell are you doing here? No one in their right mind actually eats the slop. Oh yeah, right. I saw that you guys were hiring, I said, slightly stunned by his statement. Shoot, I forgot I put that up. Yeah, we're hiring. I'm the manager. When can you do an interview? Whenever's good for you, I guess. Whenever, huh? How about now? I ain't got jack shit going on. Really? I couldn't tell. Yeah, sure. I've got my resume, if you wanna take a look at it, I replied, handing him a crumpled piece of paper from my back pocket. Yeah, lemme take a gander. I waited with bated breath for the question that I knew would come. It always did. And, like clockwork, there it was. What am I looking at here? According to this, you have a 10-year gap in employment. You're an ex-con, aren't you? I sighed, glancing down at the floor. This is how every interview went. The employer would find out I'd been to prison, and they'd drop me faster than a hot coal in the middle of July. No point in lying. He'd find out one way or another. Yeah, I am. I've turned a new leaf, though, I swear. I just need a chance. I promise I'll do well here, Mr. Gregg, please, I dash. The fake fisherman held up a hand, saving me any extra groveling. I don't care if you've been to the big house. Come, take a seat. We'll start your interview, he said, leading me to the nearest table. I was beaming as I slid out a dust-coated chair. I'd never gotten that far before. Most employers would have kicked me to the curb already. I had a good feeling about this. First question, Greg began, resting his elbows on the grimy tabletop. What have you heard about Long John Silver's? Any of the lore, how shitty the food is, how run down the place looks, anything at all? Nothing, really. People say the food is ass, but I've never met anyone who's actually eaten here before. Well, that's because no one has eaten here before. Aside from the occasional health inspector, that is. Sometimes we get elderly folks who wander in here thinking it's a Piccadilly or a Golden Corral, but nobody really buys food here. My brows furrowed. That was such a strange thing to tell me right off the bat. This dude must have been off his rocker. The cosplay wasn't really helping his case. Can I ask why no one eats here? I mean, I can't imagine the food is that hard to stomach. Greg shuddered. Oh, believe me, if you'd tasted it, you'd be singing a different tune. But it's not the food that scares people away. Isn't it obvious? I narrowed my eyes on him. No, not at all. This place is a front, for fuck's sake. We don't have any paying customers, the dining area looks like no one stepped foot in it for half a century, and our slogan is fish yet. I couldn't come up with a lazier catchphrase if I tried. I don't get how no one has caught on yet. Corporate's not exactly doing the best job at trying to hide it, if you ask me. I pondered for a moment. He did have a point. Fish yeah is a pretty trash slogan, and I did feel a bit creeped out even stepping foot into the lobby. Come to think of it, they really weren't doing that much to throw people off their trail. Okay, I'm kinda scared to ask, but what exactly is this a front for? Greg locked eyes with me, his jovial demeanor melting away. You really wanna know? Yeah. That's kinda why I asked. He sighed, tugging on his beard. Well, alright. Follow me. It'll be easier if I show ya. But fair warning, you're about to see some fucked up shit. I've seen a guy get his head bashed into a concrete wall so hard that his brains were gushing out from his skull. I think I'll be okay. That's the spirit. Right this way, Greg said, his boots squeaking against the grungy tile as we walked. He led me past the kitchen and to a door that said break room in faded blue letters. He pushed it open. It creaked loudly on its hinges, echoing through the darkness. Greg then flipped a light switch, illuminating a set of concrete steps. He turned to me and glanced down to meet my gaze. You sure you wanna do this? Sure as I'll ever be. After you, I said, extending a hand toward the stairs. Greg began clomping down the steps, clutching the handrail for dear life. I didn't blame him. He was a big dude, not to mention the fact that a long tumble down solid concrete steps would probably hurt like shit. I followed Greg for what felt like a millennia. The temperature began to plummet the further down we went. We must have descended at least 4 stories before we reached a door, but it was impossible to tell. I probably should have been more worried about what was down there, but in all honesty, I couldn't think of anything besides how much that climb back to the surface was going to suck. Suddenly, Greg stopped in his tracks. I nearly tripped over my own feet trying not to slam into him. Hey, what gives? I nearly barreled over you. Ha! You run over me? Good one. If you haven't noticed, I'm built like a brick wall. But, to answer your question, we're here. Greg could see that I was puzzled. Yes, there was a door sitting before us, but we hadn't reached the bottom. Yeah, this ain't as deep it goes. You don't wanna know what's down there, he said, a chill rippling through his body. No, Gregory, actually, I do want to know what's down there. Being all ominous and shit. Who wouldn't be curious after that? Okay, I'll take your word for it. What's in there, then? I asked, pointing to the solid gray door that loomed ahead. You're about to find out. Before we go in, you know to keep your mouth shut, right? Nobody likes a whistleblower. I ain't no snitch. You don't make it out of prison alive by being a rat. That's what I like to hear. Brace yourself. We got some weird crap in here. I nodded. Greg stooped down, holding his eye open for a retina scanner I hadn't previously noticed. A green light flashed, and I heard the locks disengage. Whoa. That is so fucking cool, I muttered, following Greg through the entryway. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Greg led me down a wide hallway. Overhead lights bathed the corridor in a sickly yellow glow. As we continued to walk, holding cells began to appear to our sides. Thick glass separated us from the things within. Once the first one came into view, Greg held up a hand, motioning for me to stop. I diligently obliged. Before you say anything, yeah, I know. This is some wild fucking shit. This, he said, gesturing to the expanse of cells before us, is the real reason LJS was established. I gulped. Holding cells? Great. I'd just managed to leave prison, and I'd already managed to find my way back to another one. Just my luck. So, who are you guys keeping here? Who? No. You mean what? These things aren't human. Take Kratos here for example. He'd eat you alive without giving it a second thought. I peered through the glass of the cell before us. The exhibit was expansive. It appeared to be modeled after a marshland. Trees dotted the enclosure, and the ground was damp, coated in a thick layer of peat with various shrubs emerging from within. I squinted. It was difficult to see with the poor lighting, but after a moment, I finally understood what I was looking at. A massive, scaled creature slithered toward me. It was dark as night, and its yellow, reptilian eyes were staring daggers into me as it moved. That gaze. It was enthralling. A soft, soothing voice began to emanate from somewhere close by. Normally, that would freak me the fuck out, but in that moment, it didn't. It was calming, almost. That captivating timbre drifted to my ears like a fluffy, unassuming cloud. I was completely entranced. Masson. Come closer. There's something I want to tell you. I absent-mindedly obeyed, my legs willing me forward of their own volition. I nearly had my nose pressed against the glass when suddenly, I felt a stinging pain coursing through my cheek. I turned to Greg. who had a devilish grin plastered across his face. "What the fuck, man? Did you just slap me? What the hell was that for?" You wouldn't respond. I didn't have a choice. You let Kratos get into your head. Make direct eye contact, and you'll be putty in the palm of his. Well, he doesn't have hands, but you catch my drift. I glanced back at the serpent and nearly leapt out of my skin. Kratos was gargantuan. I hadn't noticed while under his spell, but the reptile had to have been at least 40 feet long from what I could see. Hell, it could have been even bigger than that for all I knew. The only thing I was absolutely certain of was that it gave me the creeps. Yeah, my bad. Let's get on with the tour, I said, shuddering at the thought of becoming snake food. You got it? Make sure to keep up. He didn't have to tell me twice. I was stuck to Greg's side like gum under a middle school desk after that. I averted my gaze as we continued our walk. I could feel Kratos's piercing stare boring into my temple the entire time we passed. And I couldn't be sure, but as we left, I could have sworn that I heard a soft voice whisper, "I'll get you next time." "That's one freaky snake," I said, trotting to catch up with Greg. "You got that right. And you know what the really terrifying part is?" I shook my head, unsure if I wanted to know the answer. "That thing's not done growing." My jaw fell to the floor. Wait a minute. So you're telling me that massive fucking snake is a baby? Yep. Kratos will probably outgrow his enclosure eventually. Honestly, though, there's a hell of a lot more fucked up shit in here than a giant reptile. We got things trapped within these walls that'll do much worse than just swallow you whole. Worse than a massive snake with hypnosis? What could possibly be creepier than that? Greg turned to me and smirked, coming to a stop before another exhibit. His devious smile made my skin crawl. "I'm glad you asked. This," he said, gesturing to the enclosure, "is one of the most evil things we've got on display. Her name is Alice." I peered through the glass, kicking myself for asking such a stupid question. I immediately recoiled at the sight of its occupant. Again, this thing was massive. It was humanoid, standing at around 15 feet tall with antlers extending toward the ceiling. I could see it clearly amid its blizzard-like environment thanks to the fact that its emaciated body was pressed up against the glass. Yellow, glowing eyes illuminated its facial features. It stared down at me hungrily, smiling wide, and showcasing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. It ran a clawed finger down the glass separating us, creating an ear-piercing squeak. Though I knew logically that there was no way it could reach me, I couldn't help feeling like a mouse about to be devoured by a cobra. What the fuck is that thing? I stammered, grabbing onto Greg's raincoat like a terrified child. Alice here is a Wendigo. We don't know exactly what happened to her, but speculation is that she had to eat her dead buddy to survive a snowstorm around 30 years ago. And this is the result. Wow. Okay, lesson learned. My lips are sealed for the rest of the tour. Good. Just a little further, and we'll be at the control room. Got some people to introduce you to. I glanced back at the monstrosity as I timidly trailed Greg. My blood instantly turned to ice. Alice was waving at me. Fuck. 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 That thing is creepy as shit. Note to self, do not get on Alice's bad side. Eventually, we reached the end of the hall. There were 3 doors, one to each side, and another up ahead. Greg sauntered up to the door directly in front of us and again stooped to have his eyeball scanned. Once he was accepted, he turned back to me. Get ready. You're about to meet the crew. They're a strange bunch. Cool beans. Let's go. Greg swung the door open, and we entered the control room. All things considered, it didn't seem like a bad work environment. 2 men, one younger and the other middle-aged, were huddled around a water cooler in the left corner. They wore yellow t-shirts and jeans with Long John Silvers emblazoned on them in blocky blue letters. Intricate control boards composed the right wall. Each was labeled with the name of a cryptid. A long, metal table sat opposite them, where a woman around my age sporting a lab coat sat, dissecting what appeared to be the corpse of a goblin. Hey everyone! Gather round. Got someone I want you all to meet. The team curiously obliged, lining up before us. This is Mason. He just wandered in here looking for a job. Might be inclined to give it to him, too, once we make it through the interview. Mason, this is Lloyd. He's one of our keepers, Greg said, starting with a young, clean-shaven man to my right. He looked fresh out of college. Still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Lloyd offered me a smile and a weak wave. I returned the gesture. This old guy right here is Ahmed. He's our senior keeper. Damn, Greg. I'm only 42. You're not getting any younger yourself. Anyway, nice to meet ya kid, Ahmed replied, extending a hand to me. The dude was jacked. His biceps were bigger than my head, so needless to say, I was a bit intimidated. Despite that, he radiated a warm, inviting aura. I grasped his outstretched palm and immediately regretted it. Every bone in my hand was reduced to dust. And here we have Alana. She's our resident vet of sorts. She conducts research and keeps the entities in good health. Alana waved anxiously at me, only briefly meeting my gaze. She was a looker. Gorgeous blue eyes, straight white teeth, the works. Hubba hubba. I wouldn't mind taking her home to Mom. Suddenly, a short brunette girl burst through the door. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked panicked. We have a code red. One of the entities has escaped. I watched Greg's face drain of color. He bolted over to her, clasping his meaty hands onto her shoulders. Trina, it'll be okay. Just stay calm. Tell me, which one of the entities was it? The slime girl. The moment she said that, Greg loosened up. Seriously, Trina. You get everyone all worked up over that? You locked her in the east wing, right? Trina averted her gaze, her cheeks burning red. Yeah, obviously. We're good, then. Worst that'll happen is she'll climb up the wall and try to hide on the ceiling. Lloyd, can you take care of it? He nodded and began to trot out of the room. I'll go with him. It's been a slow day for us, Ahmed said, grabbing what appeared to be a specialized tranquilizer gun on his way out. I stood there, scratching my head. Greg. What's up, buddy? What the hell is a slime girl? Alana facepalmed herself. And on that note, I've got work to do, she scoffed, returning to prodding the remains at her station. Exactly what the name says. A girl made of slime, Greg replied. Trina stood beside him, shaking her head. You must be new around here, she said, pursing her lips. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock, I muttered. Trina narrowed her eyes on me. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot. This is Trina. She's our nutritionist. She's in charge of putting together the meals for all our creepy crawlies. She's sort of an assistant to Alana when she's not making lunches. Hey. I do more than help out and do a little cooking, she huffed, slugging Greg in the arm. He was completely unfazed. Oh yeah? Like what? Like, Exactly. Now, show Mason here a warm welcome. Hi, nice to meet you, Trina mumbled under her breath, never daring to make eye contact with me. Trina. I said a warm welcome. That was cold as ice. Try again. Ugh, fine. Trina's face contorted into the biggest fake grin I'd ever seen. She looked like the Cheshire Cat overdosing on crack. Hi, I'm Trina. Nice to meet you, Mason. I'm sure you'll make a swell addition to the team. There. Happy now? Yes, good job, Greg said, patting her on the back. Nice to meet you too, I guess. For the record, I preferred the cold greeting. That was just creepy. Trina's face turned red as a fire engine. Oh, I am gonna fuck you up. You've really done it now, you methed out pea-brained weirdo, she fumed, charging toward me. Greg clasped her head with one hand, keeping her at arm's length. Trina aimlessly punched at the air, as if she thought she was really doing some damage. Is she always like this? You've got a little firecracker on your hands. Greg sighed. Unfortunately, yes. We both stood there and watched Trina's fruitless attempt at violence until her arms stopped swinging and went limp by her sides. Are you done now? Greg asked, cocking an eyebrow. Why yeah, Trina sputtered, struggling to catch her breath. If I let you go, are you going to try attacking Mason again? No. The instant Greg released her, Trina lunged for me. Greg rolled his eye and grabbed her by the waist, hoisting her over his shoulder like it was nothing. "Let me go. This isn't fair," Trina shouted, futilely pounding her fists against Greg's back. "If you're going to act like a child, then I'll treat you like one," he replied, plopping her down into a rolling chair. He pushed her into a corner and stopped, wagging a finger at her like a parent scolding a child. "You're in timeout. Face the wall, and don't move a muscle until I get back. Got it?" "Yeah. Jerk," she muttered, pouting, and folding her arms across her chest. "Alana, babysit her while I'm gone, please." "She's gotta learn her lesson," Greg requested, his rubber boots squeaking against the linoleum flooring as he made his way back to me. "Got it, boss," Alana said, flashing him a thumbs up, all the while maintaining focus on her work. "Alrighty, let's go back to the lobby to finish your interview, shall we?" I nodded as Greg led the way back to my sworn enemy, the stairs. "Why can't you people invest in an elevator?" I wheezed. That climb back up was worse than I'd thought. I really needed to implement some cardio into my daily workout regimen. Greg chuckled, his boisterous laughter ringing throughout the empty dining area. "An elevator? In a Long John Silver's? Yeah, that wouldn't raise any red flags." "Okay, fair point," I retorted, slowly catching my breath. "I'm gonna take a seat. I'm dying over here. Take your pick. The lobby's all yours." I slid into a booth and sprawled out as Greg took his seat opposite me. He grinned at me as I finally began to regain my composure. "Don't worry. You get used to the stairs over time. Now, are you ready to continue the interview?" "Yeah. I'm good now. I just have one quick question, though." "Hit me with it. Why did you show me all that?" "I mean, I would never in a million years, but what's to stop me from sending in an anonymous tip about this place? Kind of a big risk to go showing potential new hires that stuff, don't you think?" "I was going to go over that later, but I might as well get it out of the way," Greg said, pursing his lips. "Who the hell would believe you? Long John Silver's housing a bunch of monsters? No one in their right mind would buy that for even a second. As for incentive to keep your lips sealed, this is a government-run operation. You utter one peep, and they'll send a guy to wipe you off the face of the planet faster than you can shit your pants. Catch my drift?" "Yep. Loud and clear." "Damn, I'm in deeper than I thought. This had better be worth it." Moving on. "We're looking for another keeper. I don't have too much work history to go off of, but I really think you have the balls for it. After a decade in the slammer, I'm sure you can hold your own. Not to mention, Alice and Crito seem to take a liking to you," he said, wiggling his eyebrows up and down. I nearly threw up at the thought of that. The two most terrifying creatures I'd ever seen in my entire 30 years of existence taking a liking to me? Nope. No, thanks. Great. They seem friendly. So, assuming I get offered the job, how much does it pay? 200 grand a year. I instantly perked up. At that moment, I must have looked like a cartoon character with big green dollar signs in his eyes. That was more money than I'd ever dreamed of. Wow. Okay, that's great. It's not too shabby. So, I think I've seen enough. I know you got what it takes. The job's yours if you want it. I'll take it. Thank you so much, Mr. Greg. I promise I won't let you down, I said, standing and enthusiastically shaking his hand. That's what I like to hear. When can you start? Greg asked, obliterating my fingers with his handshake. Ow. I mean, I can start as soon as you'll have me. Great. Fill out these papers and show up back here bright and early at 8 a.m. sharp. Glad to have you aboard, he boomed, releasing me, while producing a stack of documents from his raincoat. What the hell? Does he always keep those on him? Got it? Thank you again for the opportunity. I really needed this. Don't mention it. But just so you know, this job is no cakewalk. There's a reason we get paid so handsomely. As I would come to find out, Greg was absolutely right. I should have known that a paycheck that high comes with a mountain of risks. I left the restaurant feeling like I'd won the lottery. Yeah, I'd just found out that monsters were real, and yes, I was absolutely terrified of interacting with them, but as long as I could learn to survive, I'd be fine, right? Surely, nothing could go wrong dealing with a pack of vicious man-eating cryptids. I was going to be a-okay. At least, that's what I told myself. I practically skipped up to the door through the parking lot when I showed up for my first shift the next day. I was on cloud 9. 200 grand a year and I was getting to work with a hot chick? Count me in. I giddily reached for the door, and as luck would have it, it was locked. I rolled my eyes. Of course. Either Greg had forgotten about me, or someone had decided to haze the new guy. I pulled out my phone, realizing that I had no other option, and called Greg. He took a long time to pick up, but once he did, I could tell that he was woefully unprepared to tackle the day. Hey Mr. Greg, it's Mason. Yeah no, your new hire. Can you let me in? The door's locked. I was met with perturbed grumbling and what sounded like sheets rustling. Fuck, I'm late again. Sorry about that, buddy. I'll have Trina come let you in. She's got something she needs to tell you anyway. Seriously, Greg. You could have sent anybody down there, preferably Alana, and you picked the adult toddler? Come on, man. Woohoo. I can't wait. That's the spirit. I'll see ya when I get there. And with that, he hung up on me. I was beginning to realize that either Greg didn't understand what sarcasm was, or he was a master of satire. And I was leaning toward the latter. I reclined against the side of the building, trying, and probably failing, not to look shady. Trina sure was taking her sweet ass time. At that rate, I would have rather watched paint dry. I was beginning to nod off when the door beside me swung open. Get your sorry ass in here before. Whew. I am out of shape, Trina sputtered, face red as a beet. From 4 flights of stairs? Ha! Loser. Hey. I may be out of shape, but I can still kick your ass. And with that, the little demon began rapid-fire punching my back. Honestly, it felt kinda good. She might have gotten a knot out. Thanks for that. I was feelin' a little stiff. I'm sure that you probably locked me out, so that's karma for ya. I did not. I mean, maybe I did. But you deserved it, she huffed as we made our way to the break room. Look, whether I deserved it or not is up for debate, I said, holding the door open for her, but at least I didn't throw a temper tantrum and get put in timeout. Trina grumbled incoherently to herself as we descended. A smug grin inched across my face. She really was like a toddler. Oh, yeah, before I forget, Greg told me over the phone that you had something to say to me. What's up? He wanted me to say sorry for yesterday, but we both know that I'm not, she retorted without even sparing a glance back at me. Fair. I've got a proposal for you. I won't tell Mr. Greg that you didn't apologize if you give me another one of those back massages later. That got her attention. Trina stopped in her tracks, spinning around to face me. A malicious grin spread across her lips, and she offered me her hand. You won't tell Mr. Calloway and I get to take my anger out on you. You've got yourself a deal. I gladly accepted her handshake. Calloway. So that's his last name. Oh well. I'm still gonna call him Mr. Greg. Definitely suits him better. Trina and I proceeded to the control room in silence. I tried to keep my eyes glued to the floor to avoid any incidents like the previous day, but unfortunately, I caught Alice smiling and waving at me again. Had she even moved at all? Creepy. Once we arrived at the control room, we were greeted by the remainder of the crew. Everyone occupied their previous spots. Alana was hard at work typing something into a computer, while Lloyd and Ahmed were shooting the shit, each holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. Hey. Newbie. Good to see you again, buddy. Wasn't sure if you'd be back, Ahmed said, setting his cup down, and making his way over to me. A couple of creepy crawl eyes aren't gonna scare me off so easily. You're gonna have to try harder than that to get rid of me. Well, I'm glad you said that. Because today, you're getting some on-the-job training. And we start right now. Follow me, Ahmed said, grabbing a tranquilizer gun from a stand beside the door. I gulped. Why did I have to say that? Me and my big mouth. I followed Ahmed back to the area with the 3 doors. He led me to one that said West Wing in faded, barely legible letters. Don't worry. "I'll start you off with one of the more tame ones," he smirked as he held the door open for me. "Uh-oh. Something tells me that this won't be fun." I could feel butterflies fluttering in my stomach as the door shut behind us. I had a sinking feeling that whatever Ahmed had planned, it wouldn't be good. Not for me at least. As we walked, I realized that each enclosure had a door with a screen above it monitoring the exhibit's inhabitants. "See that?" Ahmed asked, pointing to a window encased in one of the door frames. "Yeah. What about it?" "It's one-way glass. We can see them, but they can't see us." "Oh, cool. That makes me feel a little safer, I guess." I was lying. It didn't make me feel safer. Before I knew it, Ahmed came to a halt underneath one of the monitors. There was a plaque holder beside each window that had a name emblazoned on it for each cryptid. This one said Clarissa. "Why are we stopping here? What's a Clarissa?" Ahmed facepalmed himself. "Clarissa's not the thing's species. It's her name, ya nincompoop. This entity is one of the black-eyed children. Ever heard of them before?" My brows furrowed and I shook my head. "No, what are those?" "According to the internet, they knock on people's doors at night and try to gain entry to their homes." "That's it? Sounds kinda lame," I scoffed. "A kid who couldn't even break an entering? Piece of cake." "Well, unfortunately for everyone, the stories are tame in comparison to the real thing. This one was found at a small college. Turned out the dean had summoned all sorts of entities. Once he was killed, the creatures went with him. All of them except for Clarissa, that is." "All right, so what do we need to do, then?" "Follow me. I'll show ya. But be careful. Don't speak directly to Clarissa, and do not touch her. She really doesn't like that," Ahmed said, punching in a code on a keypad beside the door. I watched as it whirred open. I nodded, diligently obeying Ahmed's orders, and headed toward the entrance. I felt as if something was off. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I noticed it too late. Right as we were about to make it through the entryway, Ahmed sidestepped me and shoved me inside. He quickly leapt back and pressed a button on the keypad. I stared in complete shock as the door slammed shut, locking me inside. What terrified me the most wasn't the small, dark room or the sinister being sitting in the rocking chair in the corner. No, what shook me to my core was the devilish grin plastered across Ahmed's face as he abandoned me to my fate. My heart dropped into my stomach, and my face drained of color. What the fuck, Ahmed? Feeding the rookie to an eldritch deity on his first day? Not cool, man. I hesitantly turned toward the little girl rocking back and forth slowly in the darkest corner of the room. Once I saw her face, the creaking of the rocking chair fell silent. My eyes grew wide as dinner plates. My back was pressed against the wall like the floor in front of me was made of burning magma. Clarissa was the most downright evil child I had ever seen. Her pupils encompassed the entirety of her eyes, twin pitch-black orbs that felt as if they could consume my entire being. She was ghostly white, and her face was framed by neatly kept black braids. She wore an outdated dress, Victorian era if I had to take a stab at it, along with matching shoes. The monstrosity smiled at me. Those yellow, rotting teeth were enough to make my skin crawl. But the worst part was her aura. Clarissa exuded an air of malevolence unlike anyone or anything I'd ever met. It was easily 10 times worse than that of Alice, and that's really saying something. "Come closer." Clarissa's demented voice floated to my ears from across the room. Her smile seemed to be growing wider by the second. We were playing a deadly game of cat and mouse, and spoiler alert, I was not the cat. I vehemently shook my head, keeping my back glued to the wall like my life depended on it, which, to be fair, it kinda did. "Please. I'm lonely." Clarissa's voice was strange. It was as if someone had taken a little girl's voice and pitched it down an octave. A chill rippled down my spine every time she spoke. "No, I don't think tha. Clarissa's eyes lit up, and she greedily licked her lips. I had a sinking feeling that I was about to screw up big time. Then, I remember something Ahmed told me. Don't speak directly to Clarissa. It's not a good idea is what I would say if I was talking to someone. Nope, just thinking out loud here. All alone. By myself. Just me." Clarissa's joyous expression shifted to an unsatisfied snarl. She almost had me, and she knew it. Suddenly, to my surprise, the door opened back up again. "Congratulations, buddy. You passed the TE-. Smack. I socked Ahmed right in the kisser. He glanced back at me, blood trickling down his lip. "What the fuck, Ahmed? You coulda killed me, you asshole. Really funny prank you just pulled, locking me in here with a damn demon child. Clarissa didn't hurt you. She's harmless as long as you don't touch her or speak directly to her. That's it? I just had to make sure you were capable of following basic instructions. And that really fucking hurt, yeah, know that," he replied, dabbing at his wound with a napkin he'd produced from his pocket. "Obviously. Happy now? I don't want to spend another second in the same room as that thing. Or you, for that matter. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because you're stuck with me," Ahmed grinned, slapping me on the back. "Now, let's go. You're not the only one who doesn't like hanging around Clarissa. Was that really the only reason you brought me here? We didn't have anything to actually do. I mean, like maybe, I don't know, our jobs." I wondered aloud as the door whirred shut. "No, not with Clarissa. That's the only upside to her. She doesn't make a mess, she doesn't piss or shit, and she won't even eat anything. All she does is sit, stare, and occasionally try to get you to speak to her so she can rip your insides out. Really, the only thing we need to do is dust her room every once in a while. So then, where to now? I knew I'd probably regret asking, but it's not like he was going to hide it from me. Now that the rookie has now that the test is over, we're going back to the control room to pick up Lloyd and our equipment. The two of us are going to show you what being a keeper is all about, Ahmed smirked, sending a chill undulating through my body. I didn't like how he kept doing that. It felt like he was up to something mischievous. After once again passing through multiple doors, we found ourselves back in the control room. Greg stood in the corner talking with Lloyd, dressed in his signature fishing attire. Apparently, he'd finally decided to roll out of bed. Hey! There he is. Mason, glad to see you back, Greg boomed as he approached us. Yep, right on time, too, I said, a smile beginning to inch across my face. Hey, cut me some slack. This job ain't easy. Now, I think I gave you some papers or something yesterday. Oh yeah. I've got them right here, I replied, producing a crumpled wad of sheets from my back pocket. I watched Greg's expression falter as a pang of guilt stabbed my chest like an ice pick. Oh. Thanks, I guess, he said, pinching the disheveled mess as if it was a dirty diaper. I'll just put this to the side for now. Ahmed, did you show him the thing? Greg asked, shooting him a wink. What the hell, Greg? He was in on it this whole time. That's strike one, you dirty bastard. Yep, and he passed with flying colors. Lloyd and I were just about to show him how to feediculous, weren't we, Lloyd? Lloyd sighed, joining the group. Yeah, we were. Mr. Calloway, feel free to come watch. We might even let Mason feed him his meal. Yeah, know what? I'll take you up on that. My workload isn't too bad today, and I know how much Lloyd loves Oculus. I could see Trina snickering out of my peripheral vision. Apparently, Lloyd saw her too, because he didn't look happy. Shut up, Trina. Keep it up and I'll substitute you for Oculus's breakfast today, he spat, scowling at her. I didn't even say anything. You just look for reasons to get pissed at me, she retorted, folding her arms across her chest. I don't look for reasons to get pissed at you. You give me reasons to get pissed at you, Lloyd said, his perturbed demeanor melting into a sly smirk. I could see a grin tugging at the corners of Alana's lips. Hey. You're supposed to be on my side. Trina shouted, glaring disapprovingly at her. No, we're all supposed to be on the same side. Alana's right, Greg interjected, we're supposed to have each other's backs. No more bickering, okay? And Trina, stop instigating this before I put you in timeout again. That's not fair. Lloyd started it. Trina, Greg replied, shooting her a no-nonsense stare. She shifted her gaze to the floor. Fine. I'll be good. Thank you. Now, is everyone ready? Mason's not, Ahmed chimed in. Here, take this. He handed me what appeared to be a cattle prod with buttons on the handle. "It works like this," he said, distancing himself from the group. "The bottom button is low voltage, the middle one is high voltage, and the top one, well, we don't use that unless something seriously goes wrong." He demonstrated, pressing each of the respective buttons. I could hear a zapping sound steadily increase as he flipped through them. "Got it? Is that all I need?" "For now, yes. We'll need to pay a visit to the meat locker first." I nodded. "The meat locker? I guess I should have known they'd have one of those with how massive some of the creatures were. I mean, Alice is a Wendigo. They only eat human flesh, right? That must mean..." Ahmed and Greg lead the charge, while Lloyd and I lagged behind. I decided to take that opportunity to become acquainted with him and subtly squeeze some info out of him. "So, about the meat locker. Do some of these things eat human flesh?" Lloyd pursed his lips and glanced up at me. "They sure do. And it's our lucky day, because Oculus is one of them." "Great. No one told me I'd have to handle corpses in addition to all this freaky shit. Thanks for filling me in on that, Greg. What exactly is Oculus? And why do you love it so much?" "You'll find out soon enough. I just hope you don't have arachnophobia," he replied stoically. "Arachno what?" "Come on, Lloyd, you can tell I'm not the brightest crayon in the box. Help a guy out here." "Oh well. I guess I'd better wait and see for myself." Soon we found ourselves standing at the end of the hallway in the west wing. A large metal door stood before us. Ahmed grinned at me. I really wished he'd stop doing that. "Mason, be prepared. Oculus's diet is peculiar, to put it lightly." "Yep, sorry to burst your bubble, but Lloyd already spilled the beans. Let's just get this over with, okay?" Ahmed's smile faded into a dissatisfied frown. "All right, have it your way," he muttered, reaching for the door handle. Once Ahmed pulled the door open, we were assaulted by a rush of cold air. I followed the group inside what appeared to be a giant refrigerator. Shelves upon shelves were lined with strange concoctions and containers filled with an assortment of different foods. The further inside we went, the stranger the items became. A dead deer, rabbit paws, squid tentacles. And then I saw it. Once the group finally came to a halt, my stomach began to churn and I started to feel lightheaded. Because lying on the shelf before me was a beheaded human cadaver. Its skin was pale, but still. It looked fresh. Where did that come from? Like, who sends these here? I asked, dumbstruck. Though Lloyd had given me plenty of warning, it was still a shock to the system. I mean, what kind of fucked up organization keeps corpses on hand? Before you say it, yeah, I know. That's called a morgue, Mason. Hate to break it to ya, but this place ain't a damn morgue. At least, I don't think it is. Greg clasped me on the shoulder, nearly causing me to jump out of my skin. Ever wonder what happens to people who donate their bodies to science? Well, now you know. So, the government supplies them. Yep, they sure do, Ahmed said, wheeling a dolly over to the shelf. We just got a fresh shipment yesterday. Anything older than a week or so usually goes into that freezer at the end of the fridge. Waiting for these things to thaw is a pain in the ass. So be glad we don't need to today. So, what do they do with the heads? I asked sheepishly. Not sure, but my guess is that they dispose of them elsewhere out of respect for the donor. Yeah, no, on account what the bodies are being fed to, Ahmed replied, hoisting the headless carcass onto the dolly. That makes sense. It's still pretty fucked up, though. Don't worry, you'll be desensitized to it in no time. It might seem screwed up now, but hey, these creatures gotta eat, Greg bellowed, playfully slapping me on the back. All right. Let's get going. I don't want to have to spend any more time with Oculus than necessary. I nodded, following Lloyd and the others out the door with Ahmed pushing the corpse as he walked. My heart pounded against my chest like a jackhammer as we passed each enclosure. I glanced up at the screen above Clarissa's room as we went. She was sitting motionless in her rocking chair, that demented smile still plastered on her face. What a creep show. Finally, we approached a door with a nameplate beside it that read Oculus. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I glanced up at the screen that projected Oculus's habitat. It seemed to be modeled after a rainforest. Trees shielded the ground from view, limiting my field of vision. I thought I wouldn't have any luck. But, when my eyes drifted to the corner of the screen, I saw it. I could feel all the color draining from my face. A thick, massive web sat in the corner of the room. And in the center of that web, the biggest damn spider I'd ever seen. The thing was gargantuan. Though I was yet to see it up close, I could still gauge its size just from the recording. I was beginning to sympathize with Lloyd hard. I fucking hate spiders. Here. Take these, Greg said, handing me a trash bag, disposable gloves, and a trowel. What? Why do I need these? And where'd you get this stuff from? I asked, perplexed. You thought I just wore this raincoat for show? It's got some big pockets. Perfect for storing things. Believe it or not, spiders shit just like every other living creature. Someone's gotta clean it up, and it ain't gonna be me, he shrugged, grinning mischievously. Spider shit? Really? That is the last thing I expected to hear. Hey Mason, come here for a sec, Ahmed said, freeing me from my staring match with Greg. Watch this. Ahmed pressed an orange button on the keypad beside the door. Purple mist began to waft down from the ceiling. My eyes stayed glued on Oculus. The beast stood, then began to sway back and forth, before ultimately collapsing back onto its web. Then, the mist was sucked away as quickly as it had appeared. What was that? Did you kill it? Lloyd scoffed. Of course not. That would take a miracle. The mist only puts the thing to sleep. Once we get the go-ahead, we'll have to head in, dump its meal, and clean the place as quickly as possible. We'll only have about 15 minutes before it wakes up, and we do not want to be in there when it does. 15 minutes? They couldn't have given us a little more time. That's the government for you. They can afford millions in payroll and bribes to keep this on the down low, but this is where they decide to cut corners. Bunch of stingy assholes if you ask me. I could sense a deep-seated rage bubbling beneath Lloyd's words. It was one that I could definitely relate to. Fuck em. I'm with you on that. Truth be told, Lloyd was really starting to grow on me. I didn't know much about him, but he seemed like a pretty down-to-earth guy once you got to know him. You two quit flirting and get over here. We got the green light, Ahmed said, pointing to a literal green light illuminated on the keypad. Oh, the irony. We silently trudged over to him and waited with bated breath as the door flew open. My jaw fell to the floor once we stepped inside. Somehow, they had managed to create an exact replica of a tropical rainforest. Trees extended high into the air, blocking out most of the light, and creating an eerie atmosphere. Of course, there were no animals, or Achilles probably would have hunted them down the first chance it got. The only other noticeable difference was that the entire habitat was cloaked in spider webs. Walking through them made my skin crawl. Mason, you dump the body near Achilles's web, then come back and help us. Oh yeah, and don't get lost, Ahmed ordered. Aye, Captain, I said, saluting him as he disappeared into the brush. He glanced back only briefly, rolling his eyes at my antics. Seriously, Ahmed? You're making me handle a dead body on my first day. How did you expect me to react? I dropped my things at the entrance, and begrudgingly did as I was told, carefully dragging the dolly behind me so as not to accidentally drop the headless cadaver onto the ground. Honestly, it wasn't an easy task. I had to pull the thing through dirt, which made the whole ordeal even more laborious. After what had to have been about 5 minutes, I finally reached my destination. I felt a sudden surge of adrenaline when I laid eyes upon the thing. Up close, Achilles was so much more terrifying. It was easily the size of two of me put together. Its gargantuan black exoskeleton shimmered in the light like a sleek new paint job on a luxury sports car. 8 massive, hairy legs dangled from their owner's web, each one sporting a razor-sharp, claw-like appendage. But the worst part was its face. 8 beady eyes seemed to be locked onto me, piercing my objectively tiny frame with their unseeing, yet intense gaze. And those fangs. Each one was easily the size of my forearm. What I assumed to be either venom or saliva dripped to the ground from their pinpoint tips, the mystery liquid pooling in the dirt beneath the web. My hands trembled as I dumped Achilles's meal from the dolly. My hazy vision stayed glued to the monstrosity lying before me, searching for any reason to book it out of there if need be, though, if that thing was to attack, I wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell at outrunning it. I slowly backed away, dragging the dolly with me. Right when I thought I was going to win our sickening staring match, I noticed something that made me fear for my life. It lasted less than a second, but I swear I saw one of Achilles' legs twitch. I didn't stick around to disprove my theory. I sprinted back to the entrance as quickly as my legs would carry me. I didn't care if I got yelled at for abandoning the dolly. I needed to get my ass out of there. I was nearly halfway back to the door when it happened. My lungs burned, and my legs begged me to stop, but after what would happen next, a nauseating concoction of adrenaline and dread overtook me, fueling me to pick up the pace. Greg's panicked voice crackled over an intercom, shattering the eerie silence like a sledgehammer. "Everyone get out of there now. Achilles is awake. I repeat, Achilles is awake." I don't know what made me do it. I should have just kept running, but no. I glanced back only once, and I immediately regretted it. I peered over my shoulder just in time to see Achilles leap down from its web and bolt into the trees. It was unnaturally fast. Faster than any creature of that size should have been. I turned back with tears in my eyes. I prayed that somehow we would all make it out of there safely. That Achilles would ultimately fail in its demented game of hide and seek. But I had a sinking feeling that my prayers would fall on deaf ears. I could see the door, my salvation. It was so close. I was mere feet from it. My eyes wandered to the brush only for a moment. The trees were moving. That thing was so powerful that they struggled to withstand its wrath. That was all the motivation I needed. I flew through the open doorway and collapsed onto the cool linoleum. Greg released a noticeable sigh of relief, yet fear was still etched into his features. The others. Where are they? I coughed, desperately trying to catch my breath. Lloyd and Ahmed are still in there. All we can do now is hope with all our might that they find us before it finds them. Every second felt as if it lasted an eternity. Lloyd and Ahmed were still nowhere to be seen, and the only noise that drifted to our ears was the sound of the trees rustling. Though normally I'd be scared shitless by that, it provided me with a small sliver of solace because it likely meant that my co-workers were still alive. "Come on boys, you can do it," Greg murmured, staring tensely at the tree line. I was starting to doubt whether my intuition was correct. Were those two going to make it? But then, we saw a silhouette. Someone, or something was bolting toward us. I released a breath I hadn't known I'd been holding. It was Ahmed. His face was red as a fire engine, and he was covered in nicks and cuts from the thick undergrowth, but he was alive, and to my immense relief, I noted that Lloyd wasn't far behind. Then, my stomach twisted itself into knots. Because neither was Achilles. The ground shook as the trio continued their mad dash. They were closing the distance, Lloyd and Ahmed to safety, and Achilles to them. "Come on, boys. Faster. Run like your lives depend on it." Greg shouted amidst all the commotion. Seriously, Greg? Was that supposed to be a joke? Their lives do depend on it. Not the time, man. I set aside my irritation with Greg, and directed my focus back to the scene unfolding before me. Whoosh! Ahmed burst into the hallway, skidding to a halt against the wall, and collapsing onto the ground. Lloyd was the only one left. I could see the desperation in his eyes. He was inches away. One more final push, and maybe, just maybe he'd. My eyes grew wide as saucers, and my jaw fell to the floor in complete shock. Lloyd had made it to the doorway. But so did Achilles. A sharp pitch-black claw protruded from Lloyd's chest, spraying crimson across Greg's raincoat. A wet gurgling sound emitted from his throat as dark, red blood bubbled from his mouth. Before any of us could react, the appendage retracted, with Lloyd still attached. I watched as Achilles clamped down on his skull with those salivating pincers, delivering a deadly dose of venom, and caving his head in all with a single strike. Achilles glared at us. Each of its eyes glimmered with satisfaction. It was taunting us, rubbing salt in our wounds. And then, out of the blue, it scampered away with Lloyd's lifeless corpse clenched in its jaws. We stood there, unmoving, unblinking, just completely motionless. None of us could even begin to process what we'd witnessed. I glanced over to Ahmed. He hugged his knees as tears began welling at the corners of his eyes. Greg stared solemnly at his boots. He was standing so still that I thought he might have blacked out. Until he pressed the button to close the door. No. What are you doing? We have to go back in there and get him. He could still be alive, Ahmed shouted, charging toward Greg. The faux sailor turned to Ahmed, clasping his broad shoulders in a vice grip. Ahmed, look at me. He instead averted his gaze. I said look at me, damn it. Ahmed reluctantly obeyed, locking eyes with our boss. Lloyd is dead. I know that. You know that. We all know that. A single bite from Achilles is venomous enough to take down 200 men, let alone one. He's not coming back. Ahmed's bottom lip began to quiver as he spoke. So, what then? We're just gonna fucking leave him in there? We could at least give him a proper burial. Don't you think he deserves that? Greg pursed his lips. You know we can't do that, Ahmed. Not right now. Either our system is faulty, or Achilles is building an immunity to the sleeping gas. Whatever the case, we can't risk retrieving the body right now. Not when there's a chance that we could lose another man. Ahmed couldn't contain his emotions any longer. Tears began to flow freely down his cheeks, and he released a guttural, lamented shriek. Greg softly pulled him closer, and Ahmed buried his face into Greg's blood-spattered raincoat. They stayed like that for a long time. Greg, a beacon of comfort, and Ahmed, a devastated wreck over the loss of his colleague. I'd be lying if I said I didn't shed a few tears myself. I'd only been acquainted with Lloyd for a day, but I knew that he didn't deserve to die. Not like that. 3 years. 3 painstaking years I spent training that boy, Ahmed muttered, breaking the tense silence that permeated the air between us all. I worked every damn day to teach him how to handle these things. How to survive. And this was the result. I failed him. I opened my mouth to speak. I knew that I was just a rookie with zero experience with that sort of thing, but still. It felt like I needed to say something. I racked my brain for anything I could think of to comfort Ahmed in that moment. But the words wouldn't come out. You're not a failure. I am. Lloyd's death is not on you, Ahmed. Do you hear me? Greg said, staring intensely with his good eye. Yes. Greg sternly nodded. After another moment, he turned toward me. Mason, Ahmed. I'm giving everyone 3 days off to grieve. I'll handle your keeper duties during that time. Thank you, Mr. Calloway, Ahmed replied. His voice sounded flat. Defeated. Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Gregg, I chimed in. Yeah. Don't mention it. The walk back to the control room was marred by a tense silence. I didn't stick around to see Greg deliver the news to the girls. Instead, I walked with Ahmed back to the surface, up the staircase from hell, and into the dingy lobby of Long John Silver's. I don't know if it helped, but I thought Ahmed could use some company. Once we exited the restaurant, I faced him. I'm really sorry about what happened today. I know I'm not much help, but if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to ask, okay? He nodded, producing a pack of Marlboro Reds and a lighter from his pocket. Yeah. Thanks, he said, lighting a cigarette. Without knowing what else to say, I began to shuffle off. Suddenly, Ahmed grabbed my arm, preventing me from leaving. You utter a word about any of that, and I will personally slit your throat, got it? I gulped and nodded. I was no slouch, but I highly doubted that I could take Ahmed in a scuffle if it came down to it. And that definitely was not the time. Good. Now, get out of here, he retorted, taking a long, drawn-out inhale of smoke before blowing it into the air. He didn't have to tell me twice. I booked it home. After everything I'd seen, I was all too eager to plop down in bed, share a nice home-cooked meal with my folks, and pop the top on an ice-cold beer. Maybe even liquor. Whatever I could get my hands on to help me forget. I think it goes without saying that I had some real trouble falling asleep that night. I just couldn't get that image out of my head. Lloyd's body skewered on the end of Achilles' leg. Those giant fangs encompassing his skull and crushing it like a grape. The blood gushing from his mouth like a geyser. I'd seen some fucked up shit in prison, sure, but nothing even close to that. Of course, that got me thinking. I was stupid for not realizing it sooner. The insanely good salary, most of it was hazard pay. I had unknowingly signed up for one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, and I needed to find a way out. Come on, Mason, think. How can you quit this place without being hunted down by the government? A light bulb flickered in my head. I could get the place shut down. Maybe if I left an anonymous tip over something they couldn't trace me back to, like a payphone, then the whole operation would be shut down, and I'd come out of the whole ordeal unscathed. I knew it was a harebrained scheme, but I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. My life was at stake. It took some digging, but after visiting a couple different sites and online forums, I was able to locate the closest payphone. As luck would have it, it was only a 10-minute walk from my parents' house. How convenient. As I pulled on my coat and made up some half-assed excuse about needing something from the store to appease my mother, a thought crossed my mind. One I should have taken more seriously. Is this a bad idea? Yeah, no shit, it was a bad idea. But you know what they say. Hindsight is always 20/20ths. I didn't even remember the walk to the payphone. I was so lost in thought that it felt as if I'd been teleported to it. My heart thundered in my chest as I inserted my change and reached for the phone. It felt like I was doing something wrong. Like I was a rotten kid about to make a prank call. But, in my mind, I had to do it. I hesitantly dialed the numbers 9-1-1. Hello. Police. What is your name and the nature of your emergency? Hi, I'd like to place an anonymous tip. Sir, I need a name and a phone number from you. Fine. My name is, Jason, and I'm calling from a payphone. And what is your emergency, Jason? The lady on the other end of the line already sounded perturbed. Great. I was confident that she was going to take me seriously. So, I'd like to report a fraudulent establishment. Long John Silver's. It's not really a restaurant. It's a drug front. I silently pumped my fist, and patted myself on the back for thinking on the fly. If I had told her that there was an underground cryptid research facility down there, she'd write me off instantly. But a drug front? Now, that was believable. Sir, please do not call this number again, unless you have an actual emergency. Prank calls are violations of the law, and you will be charged with placing a false police report on your next offense. Is that clear? Wait. This isn't a joke, I'm Dash. The line went dead. She'd really dismissed everything I'd told her without a second thought. I grumbled under my breath as I slunk away. I was going to need a new plan, and fast. The last thing I wanted was to end up like Lloyd. I was deep in thought, brainstorming my next move, when a jet black SUV screeched to a halt on the street beside me. Two burly men wearing ski masks leapt from the vehicle and raced over to me. My heart dropped into my toes. You've really done it now, Mason. You are fucked with a capital F. Hey, fellas. No need to take any drastic measures, I said, awkwardly raising my hands in the air to show that I wasn't a threat. "We can talk this out, okay?" I dash. Wham! One of the masked men sucker punched me in the face. A rag was violently shoved over my mouth and nose. I couldn't breathe. The vile stench of whatever noxious chemicals soaked into the fabric was all I could manage to suck in. Before I even had time to process what had just hit me, it was lights out. I lazily opened my eyes. For a moment, I'd completely forgotten about the events that led up to my untimely nap. Ah! What the fuck? I shouted, a pang of fear coursing through my body like a lightning bolt. Greg's face was mere inches from mine. "Oh, good. You're alive. Thought we might have killed ya for a minute there," he admitted, backing away from me. Upon surveying my surroundings, I noticed that we were in a large room with concrete walls and what appeared to be empty enclosures to either side of me. I glanced down and realized that my arms and legs had been bound to a chair with rope. I also noted that we weren't alone. The men whom I assumed had kidnapped me stood behind Greg, their arms folded across their chests. "I'm sure you know why you're here," Greg said, frowning, and staring expectantly at me with his only good eye. My memory's kinda fuzzy. Can you give me a quick refresher?" He sighed. "Mason, you tried to call the cops and report this place." "Jason. Seriously? You've gotta try a little harder than that, son." My brows furrowed in confusion. "How did they know?" "Before you ask," Greg continued, "the local precinct is on our payroll. Say hello to Officer Garrick and Officer Jenkins. They're off duty, but they just so happened to be in the area when you decided to carry out your flawless plan." He then turned to the pair, who all the while had remained still as statues. "We're good, boys. Thanks for your help. I can take it from here." They didn't say a word. Each simply nodded before taking their leave. I heard the door slam shut behind them, sealing my fate. It was just me and Greg. "Look, kid. I'll cut you a little bit of slack this time and this time only. I think what you did was a knee-jerk reaction to Lloyd's passing, and that is the sole reason I'm going so easy on you. Just so we're clear, once you accepted that job offer, you signed your life away. The government owns you now. It owns all of us. We're puppets in their game, and you and I both know how quickly they'll toss us to the wayside the moment we step out of line. You're lucky that the bigwigs haven't caught wind of this. No more major fuck UPS. Got it?" Greg spat. A dizzying concoction of emotions swirled within me once he said that. On one hand, I was immensely relieved. Greg was taking it easy on me, and my idiotic antics hadn't cost me my life. On the other hand, I felt deep despair. My suspicions had been correct. I couldn't leave Long John Silver's until I was no longer useful to them, or until I ended up in a body bag. Yeah. I swear on my life that it won't happen again. Thanks for letting me off the hook. I really appreciate it, I muttered, sheepishly meeting Greg's fiery gaze. "Oh, no, Mason. I didn't say I was letting you off the hook. You need to learn. If I don't administer some kind of punishment, then what would deter you from trying again? I can't have that. I hope you can understand," he said, trudging to the back of my chair and dragging me toward the exhibit to my right. My face drained of color and blood began to pound in my ears. A sudden realization smacked me like a ton of bricks. There was a reason I hadn't recognized the room we were in. This was the basement. I didn't know what kind of creatures they housed in that area, but I had a feeling that they were somehow much worse than anything I'd been exposed to thus far. "Please, Mr. Greg, you don't have to do this. I've learned my lesson, I promise," I begged as he placed me squarely in front of the glass. "I didn't want it to come to this, Mason. I really didn't. But you have to understand that there are real consequences for going behind my back." Greg rapped his knuckles twice against the glass. To my abject horror, something began to emerge from the shadows. Before I knew it, I was staring into the face of a teenage boy. He was wearing all black clothing with painted nails and eyeshadow. His face was pale as a ghost, his bone-white skin nearly reflective in the dimly lit room. He wore a depraved grin on his face, like he was about to have his first meal in ages, and I was next on the menu. "Mason, I want you to meet Ishma, the demon of wrath. He's currently confined to this boy's body, but nevertheless, he still wields an immeasurable amount of power. Ishma, do not kill him or cause him to lose his sanity. We just lost a keeper, so we need everyone we can get right now." "Well, I think that about covers it. You two have fun," Greg smirked, his rubber boots squeaking loudly as he walked away. "Nice to meet you, Mason. I have a feeling that we're going to get along just fine," Ishma bellowed, his manic grin somehow stretching even wider. And then it started. My vision grew blurry, and the world around me began to spin violently. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that the vertigo would relent. Hot bile snaked up my throat, and I couldn't stop myself from spewing chunks. The distinct taste of half-digested clam chowder assaulted my tongue. Disgusting. Once I opened my eyes, I didn't find myself covered in puke with my new friends staring into my psyche. No, where I'd ended up, I wished I was back in that dingy room. Because over the next couple of hours, I would experience the worst pain I'd ever felt in my entire life. There was nothing but fire and scorched earth for as far as the eye could see, an endless void of destruction. That thing. It tormented me for what felt like days. Just about every torture method you can think of, it implemented, but with a much more violent twist. I was waterboarded with molten lava. My eyeballs were plucked out, and my eyelids were painstakingly sewn shut. My skin was peeled off like a potato. I screamed and screamed, but there was nothing I could do. All the while, that monstrosity loomed over me, laughing. Like my agony was the funniest thing it had ever witnessed. And it showed no signs of letting up. I don't know how long I was forced to endure that. It felt like days, but in reality, it couldn't have lasted longer than a few hours. I'm sure you can imagine my elation when I awoke to find that I was physically unscathed. Mentally, that was another story. It took months before I was okay again. Greg's scare tactic did the trick. Since then, I've followed my orders to a T. It's been a little over a year since this occurred. I'm finally finding the courage to make this post after all that time. Why, though? Why now? Well, I'm living on borrowed time. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors say it's aggressive, and that I don't have much time left. I'm taking precautions, of course, but if the government does happen to discover this post, I don't care. I'm going to die soon anyway, but before I do, I need to get this out there. This story is a warning. If you're ever offered a job at Long John Silver's that seems way too good to be true, please turn it down. No amount of money is worth forfeiting your life.